Now the next step, it says install the capacitors. Well, the only circle would show one capacitor. These are smaller electrolytic capacitors, both physically and electrically. They're marked 4.7 microfarad, 50 volts. They have the white line, and the positive leg is longer than the negative leg. When it goes in the box, and you can see they're marked in a circular fashion, the circle is divided in half. One side's got a white cross hatch on it. They're marked C7, 4.7 microfarad. So we'll try to install these correctly. Long leg goes in the positive side. This capacitor only of the electrolytics lays over on its side so as to fit underneath the future integrated circuit. The other ones install vertically. And be careful, they're polarized. Be careful to install them correctly. And just push them down more or less flush. And bend the legs to stabilize them. Here we are with our 9 capacitors installed. Next stage is to install the 5 millimeter LEDs, and there are 10 of them. They are polarized. It's not quite perfectly round. One side is flat. That flat corresponds to the more obvious long lead. As with all the rest of the long lead is positive. And they're clearly marked plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus. So we'll just go ahead and install these. I think just for ease of soldering, I'll put every other one in. I'm going to fit them down flush and spread the legs. Some people believe in spacing components up off the board. Sometimes that may actually be necessary, but since I don't know how the case is going to go on this, I don't see any reason to mount them off the board. That's just what I'm going to do. So there we are with our LEDs. If any are obviously crooked, just put your finger on them and loosen it with solder and straighten them up. They're not perfect. One I think is out here. The next thing they want us to do is install the lower half of this header and the power jack. The header looks like this. It's not polarized. Just fits in the holes. And there we go. Just solder one. Make sure it's vertical. It's not. Put it back into position. The power jack is polarized, but you can't hardly screw it up. It's 3 legs. One's out of line with the other. Fits in, and of course it fits so it's accessible from off the board. Again, we'll try our Now these are bigger terminals, take a little bit more heat and a fair amount of solder. Make sure it's nice and snug. Do the other two. Now watch, I'll bet it takes an inch of solder. Of course, your mileage will vary, but for through-hole component, it's pretty safe to use 0.025 inch or 64 millimeter. It's a medium-sized solder. It's not real thin. Otherwise, it would have taken 4 inches per joint. And it's not so big that you can't get in there and solder small joints, so we've done that and that. Next step's install the buttons. There's only 2. They are polarized, but I think they only fit one way. That is, they'll probably fit 2 ways, but that's okay. We'll lose our little legs now. There we go. No, it'll fit 2 ways, but it doesn't matter. It's completely symmetrical. The pins are bent, just straighten them with your flat nose. There we go. Make sure you don't solder more than 2, preferably just 1, before you make sure it's flush and square. If you need to correct it and you've soldered all 6 terminals, it's a pain in the ass. There are 4 buttons to install here. They're the long ones. And there appears to be an extra one. So I'll put it with the extra LEDs. Now these legs are a little bit bent out. You see they're bent, not just outward, but have a notch, a projection bent into them. They're not quite square, so they go in this way. And you push them down until they'll hold themselves in place. You do want to make sure they're square, but and see they're going to lay on this long thing, so might reinstall these blocks. See what that does? It'll prevent me from pushing on the extension and causing it maybe to be crooked. And this time the blocks don't prevent us from bending the wires. So they're installed reversed from normal. You see, that keeps the push buttons from lying on the deck. Take our blocks back off. And you see they're completely done. Now, look at how this little extension here, there's a notch the whole way along there. What we have to do is break that off. Just like that. Install the antenna. It looks to be soldered to the back side of the board. There is a hole . I'm not sure that hole is to locate it. Appears to be located like this, maybe. It's going to be a nuisance, because I don't really know how the case is going to go on. In fact, I may wait to do this. I believe the last thing to do on the board is to install the speaker wire here and here. At this point, you don't need to worry so much about extra parts, like extra LEDs and stuff. What I'm worried about is empty holes. And I see no empty holes except for, of course, we got the antenna, we got 4 mounting holes for the display, and these 2 here. So I'm going to try something different here. They have supplied a piece of wire to connect the speaker to the board. And they show it being wired to the bottom of the board. I'm going to see how this would work. I have some of these 2-pin JST terminals. Now the polarity going to the speaker does not matter. I'm going to install one of these at the bottom of the board, like this. I then have this wire which I'll connect to the speaker. Then I'll be able to disconnect the speaker from the radio. It may not be necessary,